The shuttle door opened with a soft hiss, and Mira Okonkwo stepped onto the metal floor of Galactic Unity Academy for the first time. She was 17 years old, had dark brown skin, and her black hair was tied in neat braids that fell past her shoulders. She carried a small bag with everything she owned for the next year. Around her, students of all shapes and sizes walked through the wide corridors. Some had scales, some had fur, some floated instead of walked. Mira had seen pictures of alien species before, but seeing them in person was different. She felt very small and very human. A tall creature with blue skin and for arms stopped in front of her. He looked down at Mira with yellow eyes that showed no warmth. "Another human," he said. His voice was deep and rough. "You are the third one this year. I am Thrax. I am the top student in Class 7 Omega. That is your class now." Mira nodded politely. "Nice to meet you. I am Mira." Thrax made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Humans are always so polite, so soft. On my world, we call your kind prey species. No claws, no armor, no venom. How did you even survive on your planet?" Mira looked at him calmly. She did not get angry. She had heard words like this before. "We managed," she said simply. Thrax shook his head and walked away, his forearms swinging at his sides. Mira watched him go. She noticed how he walked, how he held himself, how his eyes moved. She noticed everything. The academy was a massive station that floated in space around a small moon. It was built for learning, but not just regular learning. This was a school for the children of important people from across the galaxy. Diplomats, generals, leaders, they all sent their children here to learn strategy, combat, and leadership. Mira's father was a human ambassador. He had worked very hard to get her a spot in this school. "Learn everything you can," he had told her before she left. "Watch, listen, understand." She planned to do exactly that. Class 7 Omega met in a large room with seats ranged in a circle. There were about 20 students, and most of them were Velthri like Thrax. The Velthri were a warrior species. They were tall, strong, and covered in natural armor that looked like smooth stone. Each one had muscular arms and eyes that could see in the dark. The other students were from different species. There was a crystalline named Zeth, whose body was made of living crystal that caught the light. There was a small furry creature named Pip who came from a species known for their speed. And there were two other humans, a boy named David and a girl named Sarah, who sat quietly in the corner. The teacher was Professor Valeth, an old crystalline whose body had turned cloudy with age. He moved slowly, but his mind was sharp. "Today we study the Battle of Keth Prime," Professor Valeth said. "The Velthri forces won through direct assault. Superior strength, superior numbers, superior firepower." Thrax smiled proudly. His people had won that battle, and he never let anyone forget it. But, the professor continued, "there is always more than one way to win a war. Who can tell me another approach?" The room was silent. The Velthri students looked confused. To them, there was only one way to fight with strength. Mira raised her hand. "Yes, the human girl." Professor Valeth said. "What about the environment?" Mira asked. "The records say Keth Prime had unstable weather patterns. If the defenders had used the storms instead of fighting directly, they might have survived longer, maybe long enough for help to arrive." The Velthri students laughed. Thrax laughed loudest of all. "Use weather?" Thrax said. "That is the thinking of a prey species. A true warrior does not hide behind clouds and rain." Mira did not argue. She simply nodded and stayed quiet. But Professor Valeth was looking at her with interest. His crystal eyes seemed to glow a little brighter. After class, the professor asked Mira to stay behind. "You think differently," he said. "You do not think about strength. You think about, what is the human word? Leverage." "Yes," Mira said. "Humans are not strong. We are not fast. We do not have armor or claws. But we are still here. We survived ice ages, predators, and each other. We did it by thinking." Professor Valeth made a soft ringing sound, his species' way of showing approval. The Velthri believe strength is everything. They have never lost a war because they have never faced an enemy who thinks like you do. But the galaxy is large, and there are many kinds of enemies. Mira spent the following weeks learning and watching. She studied every student in her class. She learned that Thrax was proud but not stupid. She learned that the crystallines were powerful but slow to react. She learned that Pip, the small furry one, was faster than anyone, but scared easily. She also explored the station. She found maintenance tunnels that no one used. She learned how the gravity systems worked. She studied the air recycling system, the emergency protocols, and the locations of every supply closet. David and Sarah, the other humans, thought she was strange. "Why do you spend so much time in the maintenance areas?" Sarah asked one day. "I like to know where I am," Mira said. "I like to know all the exits." "You act like something bad is going to happen," David said. Mira shrugged. "Something bad always happens eventually. It is better to be ready." The weeks passed. Mira's grades were average. She did not try to be the best. She did not challenge Thrax or the other Velthri students. She stayed quiet, stayed small, and stayed watchful. Then, one night, everything changed. Mira was in her room, studying old battle records on her tablet, when the lights flickered. A moment later, a loud alarm filled the station. Red emergency lights began flashing in the corridors. She went to her window and looked out into space. What she saw made her blood turn cold. Ships, dozens of ships. They were black and angular, like insects made of metal. They were moving toward the station in perfect formation. Mira recognized them from her studies. The Kethvari Dominion, an empire of insectoid creatures who operated as a hive mind. They were brutal. They were efficient. And they never attacked without a purpose. The station shook as something hit the outer hull. Mira grabbed her bag and headed for the door. She did not know what was coming, but she knew one thing for certain. The time for watching was over. Now it was time to act. The corridors were filled with chaos. Students ran in every direction, screaming in languages Mira did not understand. The red emergency lights made everything look like it was covered in blood. Mira moved quickly but calmly. She had studied the station layout for weeks. She knew exactly where to go. The Eastern Learning Wing was where her class had been told to gather during emergencies. When she arrived, she found about 15 students from Class 7 Omega already there. Thrax stood at the center, his forearms crossed over his chest. He was trying to look brave, but Mira could see fear in his yellow eyes. Professor Valeth was not there. Neither were any other adults. "The teachers are gone," said Zeth the Crystalline. His voice rang like a bell struck to hard. "The Kethvari took them. I saw it through the window. They moved so fast. Then we fight," Thrax said. He pulled a training blade from his belt. It was only meant for practice, but it was still sharp enough to cut. "We are Velthri. We do not hide like cowards." "Wait," Mira said. "We need to understand what is happening first." Thrax turned to look at her. "The human girl wants to hide. Of course. Your species knows nothing about courage." "I know plenty about courage," Mira said quietly. "But I also know about survival. Running into battle without information is not brave. It is foolish," Thrax snarled, but before he could respond, the doors at the far end of the room burst open. 3 Kethvari soldiers entered. They were terrifying to look at. Their bodies were like giant insects standing upright, 6 limbs, hard shells, and heads with dozens of tiny eyes. They clicked and buzzed as they moved, communicating with each other in ways no other species could understand. "Children," one of them said. Its voice was cold and mechanical, produced by a translator device on its chest. "You will come with us. You will not resist. Your parents will pay for your return." Thrax did not wait. With a roar, he charged at the soldiers. His forearms moved like lightning, swinging the blade at the nearest Kethvari. For a moment, Mira thought he might win. Thrax was fast and strong. He landed to hits on the soldier's shell, leaving deep marks. But then the other 2 soldiers moved. They worked together perfectly, like parts of the same machine. One grabbed Thrax's upper arms while the other grabbed his lower arms. In seconds, the proud Velthri warrior was on the ground, pinned and helpless. "Foolish creature," the lead soldier said. "The hive is won. You cannot defeat the hive with simple strength." 2 more students tried to fight. They were also captured within moments. The Kethvari moved with perfect coordination, each one knowing exactly what the others would do. It was like fighting a single enemy with multiple bodies. Mira watched everything. She noticed how the soldiers communicated through scent and sound frequencies that other species could barely hear. She noticed how they positioned themselves to cover every angle. She noticed that they never acted alone. More HFY soldiers arrived. They began gathering students, binding their hands with sticky web-like material. About half the class was captured before someone managed to trigger the emergency lockdown. Metal doors slammed shut, cutting the room in half. The captured students were on one side with the soldiers. Mira and about 8 others were on the other side. "We have to save them," said Pip, the small furry one. He was shaking with fear but trying to be brave. "We will," Mira said. "But not like that. Not by fighting them directly." "Then how?" demanded a Velthri girl named Krenna. "You saw what happened to Thrax. He's the best fighter in our class, and they took him down in seconds." Mira looked at the group. They were all staring at her Velthri warriors, a crystalline, a few other species she barely knew. They were all stronger than her, faster than her, better equipped for combat than her. But they were all afraid, and they did not know what to do. "The HFY have one strength and one weakness," Mira said. "Their strength is the hive mind. They work together perfectly because they share thoughts through scent chemicals and sound. But that is also their weakness. If we can disrupt their communication, they become confused. They become individuals instead of a hive." "How do you know this?" Krenna asked. "I read," Mira said simply. "I studied. While you were training to be warriors, I was learning how different species think, how they communicate, how they fail." The group was silent for a moment. "So what do we do?" Pip asked. Mira pointed to a vent cover on the wall. "First, we move. They will break through this door eventually. We need to be somewhere else when they do. The maintenance tunnels connect the whole station. The HFY are too big to fit inside them. You want us to crawl through tunnels like rats." Krenna said with disgust. "I want us to survive," Mira said. "I want us to rescue our friends. And I want us to make the HFY regret ever coming to this station. But we cannot do any of that if we are captured." She walked to the vent and pulled the cover off. It came away easily. She had loosened it weeks ago, just in case. "The HFY think they are hunting us," Mira continued. "They think we are prey, easy targets, children, but they do not understand humans. On my planet, we were never the strongest animals. We were never the fastest. But we learned to hunt creatures 10 times our size. We learned to use the land, the weather, and our minds as weapons." She looked at each student in turn. "They are not hunting us anymore. From this moment, we are hunting them, and they will not see us coming." One by one, the students crawled into the vent. The Velthri had to squeeze, but they fit. Pip went first because he was small and fast. Zeph went last because his crystal body scraped against the metal dot as Mira climbed in after them. She heard the HFY soldiers beginning to cut through the locked door. "Find the remaining children," one of them ordered. "They cannot hide forever." Mira smiled grimly in the darkness of the tunnel. "No," she thought. "We will not hide forever. Just long enough to make you afraid." The hunt had begun. The maintenance tunnels were dark and cramped. The only light came from small emergency strips along the walls, casting a dim blue glow over everything. Mira led the group through the narrow passages, her mental map of the station guiding every turn. After 20 minutes of crawling, they reached a junction where several tunnels met. It was just large enough for everyone to sit in a circle. Mira gathered them together and spoke in a low voice. "We need to split up," she said. "Split up," Krenna repeated. "That is the worst idea I have ever heard. We are stronger together." "No," Mira said. "Together, we are a big target. If they find us, they catch us all. But if we work in small groups, we become hard to track. More importantly, each group can attack from a different direction." "Attack?" Pip squeaked. "We cannot fight them. You saw what happened to Thrax. We will not fight them the way Thrax did," Mira explained. "We will fight them in ways they do not expect. The HFY are looking for enemies who charge at them with weapons. They are not looking for enemies who change the environment around them." She pulled out her tablet and showed them a map of the station. "I am going to divide you into 3 groups. Each group will have one job. You will not know what the other groups are doing. This is called compartmentalization. If one group is captured, they cannot reveal the plans of the others." The students looked at each other nervously, but they nodded. They had no better ideas. Mira assigned the groups. Krenna and 2 other Velthri would go to the gravity control room. Zeth and Pip would go to the Xenobotany lab, where the station kept plants from hundreds of worlds. The remaining 3 students would stay with Mira. She gave each group specific instructions exactly what to do and when to do it. Then they separated into the darkness of the tunnels. The first attack happened 30 minutes later. A squad of 5 Kethvari soldiers was patrolling the western corridor when the gravity suddenly changed. The floor became the ceiling. The soldiers slammed upward, their hard shells cracking against the metal above them. Before they could recover, the gravity reversed again, sending them crashing back down. By the time they figured out what was happening, Krenna's group had already moved the gravity controls back to normal and escaped through the vents. The soldiers were left confused, injured, and afraid. Report. The squad leader clicked into his communicator. Unknown weapon. Gravity manipulation. We cannot see the enemy. At Kethvari command. The invasion commander received the message with annoyance. Find them, he ordered. They are only children, but finding them proved impossible. The second attack came an hour later. A large group of Kethvari soldiers had gathered in a central hallway, trying to plan their search. Suddenly, the air vents opened above them, and a thick cloud of golden pollen filled the corridor. To most species, the pollen was harmless. It came from a flower that the Academy kept in the Xenobotany lab. But the Kethvari communicated through scent chemicals. The pollen was so strong that it overwhelmed their senses completely. They could not smell each other anymore. They could not coordinate. The soldiers began bumping into each other, clicking frantically, unable to understand what their brothers were trying to say. It was like humans suddenly going blind and deaf at the same time. Pip had been terrified to enter the Xenobotany lab, but Zeth had protected him while he gathered the pollen. Now, watching from a vent above, they saw the mighty Kethvari warriors stumbling around like lost children. It worked. Pip whispered in amazement. The human knew it would, Zeth replied, his crystal voice filled with new respect. The third attack was Mira's own. She had found the station's kitchen supply area. With the help of her small group, she collected heating units meant for cooking food. She placed them in specific locations throughout a corridor that the Kethvari used frequently. When the soldiers walked through, their heat-sensing eyes detected the warm signatures. To them, it looked like there were dozens of enemies hiding behind every corner. They opened fire on the heating units, wasting ammunition and energy on targets that did not exist. While they were distracted, Mira crept up behind them through a floor panel. She reached up and yanked out the translator device from the last soldier in line. Then she disappeared back into the floor before anyone noticed. Now she could hear their communications. The Kethvari were growing frustrated. Their reports back to the commander were filled with confusion and fear. Enemies everywhere. Cannot see them. They attack from the walls, from the floor, from the air itself. Ghosts, one soldier said. This station is filled with ghosts. Mira allowed herself a small smile when she heard that. Humans had always been good at becoming ghosts. She met with Krenna's group at a predetermined location. The Velthri warrior looked at Mira differently now. The mockery was gone from her eyes. You were right, Krenna admitted. This is not fighting like a warrior, but it is working. There is no honor in losing, Mira said, and there is no shame in being smart. How did your people learn to fight like this? Krenna asked. You have no weapons, no armor. You should have died out long before you reached the stars. Mira thought about the question. She thought about human history, the countless wars, the struggles for survival, the times when small groups had defeated mighty empires through cleverness and determination. We did not survive by being the strongest, she said finally. We survived by making the strong afraid of the dark. Every creature that hunted us, we learned to hunt back. Every enemy that conquered us, we learned to outlast. We are very good at waiting, watching, and finding weaknesses. Krenna shook her head slowly. Humans are terrifying. Only to our enemies, Mira said. To our friends, we are the most loyal creatures in the galaxy. She pulled out her tablet and showed Krenna a map with a blinking dot. I have been tracking their communications. They are holding our captured friends in the central atrium. There are about 30 soldiers guarding them. The Kethvari commander is there too. 30 soldiers, Krenna said. Even with your tricks, How can we defeat 30 soldiers? We do not need to defeat them, Mira said. We just need to cut the head off the snake. The Kethvari commander controls the hive mind. Without him, the soldiers will lose their coordination. They will become confused, just like the ones in the pollen. And in that confusion, we will free our friends. And how do we reach the commander? Mira's eyes were cold and determined. Leave that to me. I need you and the others to do one thing: make noise. Draw their attention. Make them look outward while I come from within. Krenna nodded. For the first time, she looked at the human girl not as prey, but as a leader. When do we attack? She asked. Mira looked at the time on her tablet. In 2 hours. Tell the others. And Krenna, yes, thank you for trusting me. Krenna made a Velthari gesture of respect, something she had never done for a human before. You have earned it. Mira watched her go, then turned back to study the map. The hardest part was still ahead, but for the first time since the invasion began, she believed they could win. The central atrium was the largest open space in the station. It had a high ceiling made of transparent material that showed the stars outside. Under normal circumstances, it was a beautiful place where students relaxed between classes. Now it was a prison. The captured students sat in the center of the floor, their hands bound with sticky Kethvari webbing. Thrax was among them, his proud face marked with bruises from his earlier fight. Professor Valeth was there too, his old crystal body flickering weakly. Around them stood 30 Kethvari soldiers in perfect formation. They faced outward, watching every entrance, every shadow, every movement. At the center of their formation stood the commander, a larger Kethvari with darker armor and more eyes than the others. He was connected to every soldier through the hive mind. Their movements were his movements. Their eyes were his eyes. The children continued to resist. A soldier reported, "We have lost contact with 3 patrol groups. Impossible." The commander clicked. "They are only children. Soft creatures from soft worlds. The reports speak of invisible attackers, traps, the environment itself turning against our soldiers." The commander made a sound of disgust. "Superstition. Double the patrols. Find them and end this." From her position in a maintenance shaft above the atrium, Mira watched and listened through the stolen translator. She could see everything: the positions of the soldiers, the location of the captives, and most importantly, the commander. She had spent the last hour preparing. Now she checked her equipment one final time. A piece of sharpened deck plating she had made into a blade, a small device she had built from kitchen parts, and 3 smoke containers from the fire safety system. Her plan was dangerous. One mistake and she would be captured or killed. But there was no other way. She touched the communication device she had given to Krenna. "Begin." She whispered. On the far side of the atrium, an explosion of light and sound erupted. It was just Zeth using his crystal body to reflect and amplify the station's emergency lights, combined with Pip banging on metal pipes. But to the Kethvari it sounded like an attack. Half the soldiers turned toward the noise, raising their weapons. "Contact on the east side," one shouted. Then another distraction came from the west. Krenna and the Velthari students banging on doors, making battle cries, throwing anything they could find. Multiple contacts. "They are everywhere." The commander raised his arm to signal his troops. "Hold formation. It is a distraction. They are trying to..." He never finished the sentence. From the captured group, a figure suddenly stood up. It was David, one of the human students. His hands were still bound, but he had been given a simple job. At exactly this moment, he closed his eyes and activated the device hidden in his pocket. The device was crude but effective. Mira had built it from lighting strips and power cells. When activated, it produced a flash of brilliant white light, harmless to most species. But the Kethvari had compound eyes designed for darkness. The flash was like staring into a sun. Every soldier in the atrium screamed and clutched at their eyes. Even the commander staggered backward, temporarily blinded. And that was when Mira dropped from the ceiling. She fell silently, aiming for the one spot in the formation that was now unguarded directly behind the commander. She landed in a roll, came up on her feet, and drove the sharpened metal into the gap between the commander's head and body. The blade found its target. The commander made a terrible sound, half scream, half electronic screech. Then he collapsed. The effect on the other soldiers was immediate and dramatic. They had been one mind, one will, one purpose. Now that connection was severed. Some soldiers froze in place, unable to act without orders. Others began clicking frantically, trying to communicate, but unable to understand each other. A few fired their weapons randomly, hitting nothing but walls. Now, Mira shouted. The students outside charged in. Krenna led the Velthri with a battle cry that shook the walls. They were not trying to kill the confused soldiers, just knock them down, push them aside. Reach the captives. Mira ran to Thrax and used her blade to cut his bonds. You? He said in disbelief. The human girl? No time to talk, Mira said. Help me free the others. Thrax did not argue. Together, they cut the webbing from the other students and Professor Valith. The old crystalline looked at Mira with something like wonder. You killed the commander, he said. You ended the hive mind. It is only temporary, Mira replied. The ship outside will have a backup commander. We have maybe 10 minutes before they reorganize. Then what do we do? Thrax asked. Mira pointed at the far wall, where a corridor led to the docking area. The Kethvari ship is still connected to the station. It is charging its weapons. If we do not stop it, they will destroy the entire station rather than lose their prize. You want us to attack their ship? Sarah asked, her voice shaking. That is impossible. Not attack, Mira said. If we control their ship, we control everything. A Kethvari soldier stumbled toward them, still half blind, clicking madly. Thrax stepped forward and knocked it aside with all four arms. The soldier crashed into a wall and did not get up. I owe you my life, Thrax said to Mira. I called you prey. I was wrong. Lead us, human. Tell us what to do. Mira looked at the group 30 students from a dozen different species, all looking at her for guidance. A month ago, they would have laughed at the idea of following a human. Now they waited for her orders. Krenna, take half the Velthri and secure this room. Do not let any soldiers get to the communication systems. Zeth, I need you with me. Your crystal body can reflect their weapons. Thrax, you lead the main assault group. Hit hard, hit fast, do not stop moving. She looked at each of them in turn. The Kethvari think they have already won. They think we are just children, soft and weak. We are going to show them what children can do when they fight for their friends and their lives. Pip raised his small paw. What about me? Mira smiled. You are the fastest one here. I need you to run ahead and scout. Tell us what is coming before it arrives. Pip stood up straighter. He was still scared, but there was determination in his eyes now. The station shook as the Kethvari ship adjusted its position outside. We are out of time, Mira said. Let us go. They ran toward the docking corridor, leaving the confusion of the atrium behind. Ahead of them lay the enemy ship and the final battle. Mira felt the fear in her chest. The same fear every human felt before a fight. But she also felt something else. Pride. These alien students had laughed at humans, called them weak, dismissed them as prey. Now they were following a human girl into battle. Her grandmother had once told her a story about human ancestors who hunted mammoths with nothing but wooden spears and clever plans. We are small, her grandmother had said, but we are never helpless. Remember that, Mira remembered. And now she would make the Kethvari remember too. The docking corridor connected the station to the Kethvari assault carrier through a long tunnel. Emergency lights flickered along the walls, casting jumping shadows that made every step feel dangerous. Mira led her team forward, listening carefully for any sound of movement ahead. Pip came running back from his scouting position. 8 soldiers in the docking bay, he reported breathlessly. They are guarding the entrance to the ship. They seem confused but still dangerous. 8 we can handle, Thrax said grimly. His forearms were tense and ready. They reached the docking bay quickly. It was a wide room filled with equipment and cargo containers. Through the large window on one side, Mira could see the Kethvari ship, an ugly black vessel that looked like a massive insect. Frozen in metal. The 8 soldiers stood in a defensive line in front of the boarding tunnel. Without their commander, they moved strangely. Some twitched as if they were still trying to receive orders that would never come. Others stared at nothing, lost without the hive mind to guide them. On my signal, Mira whispered. Zeph goes first. Thrax and the Velthri follow. Everyone else, Stay behind cover and throw anything you can find. She held up her hand, counted silently to 3, then dropped it. Zeth charged forward. His crystal body caught the light and scattered it in 100 directions, creating a dazzling display that made it hard to see where he actually was. The confused soldiers fired at him, but their shots bounced off his hardened surface and flew in random directions. Thrax came next, roaring like a storm. He hit the first soldier with the force of a falling tree, all 4 arms working together. The Velthri students followed, their natural armor protecting them from the weak, uncoordinated attacks of the leaderless Kethvari. Within 2 minutes, it was over. The 8 soldiers lay on the ground, defeated but not dead. Mira had ordered no killing unless necessary. The Kethvari were enemies, but they were also victims of their own hive nature, unable to think for themselves, unable to survive without a leader. The way is clear, Thrax announced. Breathing hard but uninjured, they entered the ship through the boarding tunnel. The inside was dark and smelled strange, like chemicals and something organic that Mira did not want to identify. The walls were not smooth metal like on the station. They were covered in some kind of resin, like the inside of a giant hive. This place feels alive, Zeth said nervously. Stay focused, Mira told him. We need to find the command center. They moved deeper into the ship, following signs that were written in the Kethvari language. Mira had studied enough of their writing to understand the basics. Left meant engineering, right meant quarters, straight ahead meant command. They went straight. The command center was a circular room at the heart of the ship. Control panels covered the walls, displaying information in languages no one could read. In the center of the room stood a throne-like chair made of the same resin as the walls, and on that throne sat the Brood Admiral. He was massive, twice the size of a normal Kethvari soldier. His shell was scarred from countless battles, and his many eyes glowed with cold intelligence. Unlike the soldiers, he did not rely on the hive mind. He was an independent commander, a rare thing among his people. So, the Brood Admiral said, his voice deeper and more menacing than any Kethvari they had heard before. The children have come to play. He rose from his throne. Even standing still, he was terrifying. I watched you on the monitors, he continued. Clever tricks, traps and distractions. You killed my subordinate commander and disrupted my soldiers. Impressive for children, especially impressive for a species as weak as humans. He focused all his eyes on Mira. You are the leader, I can tell. The others look at you. They wait for your commands. A human commanding warriors from a dozen species. Strange times indeed. Mira stood her ground. Surrender your ship. Call off the attack. Let us go, and we will let you leave. The Brood Admiral made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. Little human, do you know how many worlds I have conquered? How many armies I have crushed? I do not need a hive mind to destroy a few children. He moved faster than something his size should be able to move. His massive arm swept toward Mira, claws extended. But Mira had been watching him from the moment she entered. She had seen his weight shift before he moved. She had seen his muscles tense. She was already diving to the side when the claws cut through the air where she had been standing. Now, she shouted "THRAXX," and the Velthri charged from the left. Zeth attacked from the right. Pip darted between the Brood Admiral's legs, distracting him. Everyone attacked at once, from every direction. But the Brood Admiral was no ordinary soldier. He spun and blocked, his thick arms deflecting blows that would have crushed normal Kethvari. He grabbed one Velthri student and threw him into the wall. He kicked Zeth so hard that cracks appeared in the crystalline's body. Foolish. The Brood Admiral growled. Raw strength means nothing against true power. Mira watched the fight from behind a control panel. She was not strong enough to fight him directly, but she was not looking for a fight. She was looking for an opportunity. And she found one. The ship's fire suppression system. Every ship had one. And this ship, built for Kethvari who breathe different air than most species, would have a special kind of system, one designed to put out fires without harming Kethvari lungs. Mira ran to the control panel and searched for the right button. She had to guess based on the symbols. Fire usually meant heat. Suppression usually meant stopping. She found something that looked right and pressed it. White foam exploded from nozzles in the ceiling. It was designed to harden quickly, smothering fires before they could spread. The foam covered everything: the floor, the walls, and most importantly, the Brood Admiral. The massive Kethvari commander roared in fury as the foam stuck to his legs and arms. He tried to move, but the foam was already hardening. Within seconds, he was trapped, not defeated, but unable to move for a precious few moments. Thrax did not waste the chance. He grabbed a metal bar from a broken control panel and swung it with all the force his forearms could produce. The bar hit the Brood Admiral's head with a sound like a bell being struck. The Brood Admiral collapsed. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Pip let out a small cheer, and suddenly everyone was cheering. They had done it. They had taken the ship. Mira ran to the main control panel. She could not read the language, but she could understand basic symbols. She found what looked like a communication system and activated it. "Attention," she said, hoping the translator would work. "This ship is now under our control. All Kethvari soldiers will surrender immediately or face destruction." She had no way to actually destroy anything, but the Kethvari did not know that. Throughout the station, the remaining soldiers stopped fighting. Without the Brood Admiral, without the Hive Commander, without any leadership at all, they had no will to continue. One by one, they put down their weapons. An hour later, rescue ships from the Galactic Unity Defense Force arrived. They found a station full of confused Kethvari prisoners and a group of exhausted students who had somehow done the impossible. The news spread across the galaxy within days. A Kethvari invasion force had been defeated, not by an army, but by students. And the leader of those students was a human girl. Mira stood at a window, watching the rescue ships move around the station. Thrax came to stand beside her. "I owe you everything," he said. "We all do. I spent my whole life believing that strength was the only thing that mattered. You showed me I was wrong." Mira shook her head. "Strength matters. Courage matters. You and the others fought bravely. I just helped you fight smartly. On my world, we have a word for leaders like you," Thrax said. "We call them Vethkral. It means mind warrior. I think humans have many mind warriors. We try," Mira said with a small smile. Thrax looked at her curiously. "Your grandmother that you mentioned, what would she say about all this?" Mira thought about the stories her grandmother had told her. Stories of survival, of cleverness, of humans facing impossible odds and finding a way through. "She would say that we did what humans have always done," Mira replied. "We made do." Professor Valeth approached them, his crystal body still showing cracks from the battle, but glowing stronger than before. "I have spoken with the Defense Force commanders," he said. "They want to know how a group of students defeated a Kethvari invasion force. I told them the truth. A human showed us a different way to fight." He placed a crystal hand on Mira's shoulder. "I think many things will change after today. The galaxy has learned something important about humans. You are not the weak species we thought you were. You are survivors, thinkers, mind warriors, as Thrax says." Mira looked out at the star's billions of points of light, each one a sun with worlds circling it. Her father had told her to watch, listen, and understand. She had done that, and in doing so, she had changed how the galaxy saw her people. Humans were still small, still soft, still lacking the natural weapons that other species had. But they had something more valuable than claws or armor or venom. They had the ability to see what others could not see, to think what others could not think, to find hope where others found only despair. And that, Mira knew, was the greatest weapon of all. Somewhere out there, more enemies waited. More challenges would come,